Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Radamic. Berto is your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We're going to have a great show for you today, folks. We have a show for you today. But before we even get started, let's remember I try to tell people this stuff all the time. I try to keep them informed. Do not buy into the fallacy that somehow the Democratic Party is a centrist party. I am going to be harping on that quite often going forward, and the reason why is because it is essential. It is of utmost necessity that we do not allow ourselves to be co-opted into believing that we should be willing to accept less than we deserve, less than we've earned, because of some mythical center that says most of Americans will somehow continue to vote against their own interests, even given all the relevant information that should detract from such an eventuality. So, folks, those numbers that you see up at the left of the screen, I will constantly and continuously put those out to let us understand what's going on here. So what is the program about today? We're going to have a great program for you today. The title of the show today is, and I'm bringing it up right now as we speak, the title of the show today is Losing the American Dream. Real estate agents expose the industry. I brought on 3 experts in the industry to talk about how, everybody buys a home. Everybody think the prices of homes are going to go up. The prices of homes are appreciating. We can probably make a profit. But what they don't understand is all the things that go underneath. That is a topic of the discussion today. That is the topic of the program today. Before we get into that, we're going to talk other things. But anyhow, several real estate professionals expose in detail some dirty big secrets in the real estate business that is causing the loss of the American dream. Americans are oblivious to the shenanigans and legal fraud. Notice I said the legal fraud, kind of an oxymoron, but it's the legal fraud that occurs in real estate. Rabiel Caban, not your average agent, owner-operator of Rabi Caban Realty Firm, Doug Price, real estate attorney at Brown and Price, and Kurt Cornell, broker owner of Cornell and Company, explain in layman terms the type of shenanigans that occur. More importantly, they provide the knowledge necessary to ensure we can discuss the solutions sensibly with the politicians when we are trying to make change. So, folks, please stay with us. The topic of the show today, again, is going to be covering real estate. This is an important topic, so stick around. And but before we get there, there are 2 things I want to talk about. There was an article a few weeks ago, probably a couple of weeks ago, or just a little bit less than a week ago, that talked about the whole issue behind the article was it is time for America to choose the progressive when they're deciding to elect the next Democratic nominee for specific reasons. And I did a little piece on that I want to go ahead and play for you right now. So here we go. Harry Reid, the longtime retired leader of the Senate, had a prescient article. What I want to do is I actually got ahead of myself there in that I didn't re-cue that. So what I want to do first is go ahead and re-cue that guy. For some reason, I didn't. So now we can go ahead and play that. Recently, the Democratic strategist who was the deputy chief of staff for Harry Reid, the longtime retired leader of the Senate, had a prescient article that he wrote for GQ magazine. In that article, he wrote that quickly nominating Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren is the Democrats' best chance in 2020. He had a cogent message that he wanted to get across. The first paragraph said it all. He said, Democratic voters want to know how this all ends. They fixated on electability, which is notoriously hard to gauge. You have to guess that other people will think several months in the future with no idea what will happen in between. Prioritizing electability in presidential elections led Democrats to nominate John Kerry, while ignoring it led them to nominate Barack Obama. Voters are not good at predicting electability, summed up pollster Patrick Murray, but despite the obsession, Democrats are whistling past one enormous threat to the electability of the Democratic nominee, a long and divisive primary. And later in the article, what he would point out is that the moderates are the ones that are likely to be creating this division among the party itself. On Joyanne Reid's show this weekend, they took on this particular subject, and it's one that I think it's important that all of us listen to. Check this out.
There's a guy named Adam Jefferson. He used to work for Harry Reid, the great strategist and former Senate Majority Leader under the Democratic Party. And he wrote a piece saying that he thinks that what needs to happen for the Democratic Party is to make a quick nomination and then try to consolidate the party. And he believes it should be Sanders or Warren because, to the point that I think a lot of you are making, it's the progressive wing of the party that has the energy and has the youth behind it and has the movement quality. Do you agree that what Democrats should do is to try to nominate quickly and then consolidate?
Well, I think, first of all, that it would do the world well. And I think, the world is watching us. Everybody wants to get rid of this racist in the White House, and, they want to do that. They're just unclear how. Make no mistake, what we're seeing now is fear. We're seeing people say, people are not supporting Joe Biden because they want Joe Biden in the office because he excites them, he ignites them to want to do action. They're saying this is the old white man with the most gravitas that potentially could occupy that seat as the president that's not Donald Trump. That's all that is. Absolutely, the progressives are bringing the energy. They're bringing the funk. They're bringing the flavor, whether you're talking about Elizabeth Warren, whether you're talking about Bernie Sanders. And again, I want to get back to the message that people of color absolutely will turn out with enthusiasm, with clapping their hands and ready to move in action if the Democrats deliver the goods. We saw that in 2008. We saw that in 2012. I gave the example of natives. Natives overwhelmingly vote Democrat when the goods are there. We need a candidate that elicits excitement, that elicits something more. And I see people on my Twitter feed when I say responses like this that say, getting Donald Trump is excitement enough. No, we actually need vision. I heard 2020 vision. That's what we need in 2020. We need somebody that can see where we're going, not just to repudiate where we've been.
Somebody who can see where we're going, not to just repudiate where we've been. Folks, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But worse, we know that the establishment cannot change. They will not change, and they cannot change because they owe their loyalties elsewhere. One hopes that the rank and file, which is the majority of us all, takes the responsibility and take heed and elect the person that is most likely not only to beat Donald Trump, but to change the entire political paradigm of the United States and to create transformational change. The only thing that could possibly save the middle class and the poor in this country. Recently, the Democratic strategy. Dean Obeidallah appeared on AM Joy. Okay, now, the next one that I want to show you guys has to do with what Obeidallah had to say this weekend on AM Joy, because I think it is something that many times the Democratic Party failed to do. We have a tendency, and I'm talking specifically about the establishment, because I am hanging with activists who know the truth, who go out there and tell the truth. But when you have people trying to centralize, make a party a centrist party, in order for people not to really see how bad many things are, what they go out do is they allow the current narrative to ferment. And it is something we have to stop. Dean Obeidallah came on AM Joy yesterday, and he was excellent in what he had to say. So what I want to do now is put him on so you can go ahead and listen to that piece. Dean Obeidallah appeared on AM Joy a few days ago where he discussed Democrats ceding the economy to Donald Trump. We shouldn't do that. And ironically, I wrote an article titled, "Make Stock Market Record Highs and Low, Unemployment Trump's Failure." And in there I said, a meme about the stock market recently got my attention. It brought not only rage and tears, but also confirmation about what we must be fighting for now. The meme was simple enough, but poignant. The meme said the following: the next time you feel poor and can't fill your gas tank, and you hold back tears trying to put together a grocery trip that can get you and your family through the week on just $40, remember that the stock market is at a record high, and America is great again. Only a few are partaking of this economy. Ask yourself a question. Why aren't wages going way up with so little unemployment? Does supply and demand no longer work? It's not about economics 101 anymore. One should remember that when a resource is scarce, that resource increases in price. As such, we are at full employment, and it is clear that wages should be increasing at a high clip. But that is not occurring. Why? Because we have a pilfering economy. This is what Dean had to say.
I think you're saying before this, and what Giassi touched on earlier about how people are personally impacted in this economy is such an important message. I think Democrats are seeding this idea that this economy is perfect.
Exactly.
That Donald Trump's turned it into a miracle. In reality, Donald Trump is losing the Donald Trump of a year ago when we had 3% GDP growth. Now we have under 2%. Bernie Sanders just did a great interview with the LA Times, and I'm not supporting any candidate per se, but he made a great point. You get a job now, but it doesn't pay well. The average American this year, in the last segment you talked about, 3% wage growth, guess what? We've had 2% inflation, meaning 1% real wage growth for the average worker in this country. 4 out of 10 Americans don't have $400 in their bank account to pay for an unknown expense in their life. Unemployment has gone up in the last year in key states like Michigan and Wisconsin. Bankruptcies of farms have gone up 25% in the last year alone. We just had a layoff announced in Michigan, GM plant. You've had truckers suffering horrifically in this year. 2 to 3 times the number of trucking companies closed down this year compared to last year. Look, there's a bubble in this economy. The Democrats are going to take the fight to that and say the rich have gotten richer, and that's not a talking point. That's the reality. How is your life? Why are you working 2 to 3 jobs, don't have enough money in the bank if something bad happens? How come you can't you're just scraping by while Donald Trump's rich friends who play golf with him at private country clubs, they're doing great. Of course they are. They're the wealthy. The tax cut was for the wealthy. Democrats need to address the issue and have policy proposals like raising minimum wage, dealing with Department of Labor regulations for overtime pay that mandates it, and the list goes on. So I think ceding this fight on the economy is a loser for Democrats. It's not left versus, not centers versus progressive. I'm telling you, I listen to people around the country every day who are suffering around this country. They call my show from different industries. Democrats have to take the fight to Trump on that.
Now, you can't argue with that. So, folks, Democrats ceding the economy to Donald Trump is a losing proposition. What we have to use the great stock market, the low unemployment, as a choke point for Donald Trump to show that with metrics looking good, he still can't take care of the middle class. He still can't take care of the people who voted for him. He still can't take care of America. Okay, folks, we're about ready to go ahead and talk about the real estate issue which the program is about today. So without further ado, let's talk about losing the American dreams. These 3 real estate business people will talk about that and should open your eyes on quite a few things. So let's go with that. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. I'm actually here lucky to be with 3 experts in the field. We have a lawyer and 2 real estate experts in Robbie Caban, Kurt, and Doug. Guys, welcome aboard. First of all, I'm going to pass it on to Robbie to introduce herself and the other 2 guests that we have here. Robbie Caban, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Alberto. I'm here with my colleagues, Kurt and Doug. Kurt is on the West Coast as a broker. Kurt, if you want to take a moment, and then we'll cover Doug a bit. To introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Kurt Cornell. I run a small business in San Francisco, past president of the San Francisco Real Estate Association of Realtors. Worked in sales for over 25 years, and our company specializes now in property management.
And my good colleague and friend here in Atlanta, attorney Doug Price. Doug?
Okay, my name's Doug Price. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for almost 30 years. My specialty is real estate. I do real estate closings and work with the developers somewhat.
Now, Doug, I understand you do something at the university as well?
Well, I'm an old student at Georgia Tech in the Master's Real Estate Development program. I just finished my halfway point last night.
Folks, it just tells you that it's never too late to learn. Well, today we have a very important topic to talk about, the loss of the American dream. And it all starts with housing. It all starts with real estate. So what I want to do is bring these three very... they won't all call themselves activists, but the mere fact that they're on the show called Politics Done Right, it means that they are activists brought into the fold. Robbie Caban is always out there in the field in Atlanta, Georgia, bringing us a whole lot of stories that proves to us that what's going on in America today is planned. What's going on in America today is systemic, and what it is that we are going to have to do to move these things forward. Robbie?
I want to thank everybody, especially you, Egberto, for providing us this opportunity with independent media. These stories don't get presented with, the full perspective, especially with people actually in the field. And this one is really important and dear to all of us. As many people know or may not know, real estate taxes, real estate revenue, single family revenue generates and basically protects real societal functions like infrastructure, schools, and everything else kind of stems out of that. That's how we have healthy societies. And I have an existing business relationship with Kurt, who has a really interesting perspective on single family residential and what investors are being allowed to do and how they're not being taxed. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and then I'll get into the specifics of what's happening here in Atlanta. I'm also from New York, so that kind of covers both coasts and a central part. And then we can get Doug's take if that I'm at that point. Kurt?
Okay. When the Great Recession came to roughly 2008 to 2012, and the homes did banks to hold them for a number of years, and then they ended up getting by. So, as a result, around the country, there are hundreds, if there are thousands of single-family homes owned by investment entities, as opposed to owned by single-family families that are living in the homes, gaining wealth by paying off their mortgage, living the American dream, and so the reason I'm participating in this, because I think it's not good for the market, it's not good for homeowners, and it only serves these investment entities that are holding on to these properties and not spinning them off at a rate that's good for our market and good for the buyers.
I want to interject something here because it sort of plays into something that I talk about all of the times, and that is in America, we make absolutely everything a product. And I think some of what you're illustrating or what you're stating there is these real estate brokers or whatever you call them, in effect, they're taking something that the average American used to build their own wealth, something that the mom and pop, they buy a home, they expect that value to be in their home, you're saying. New entities are there commoditizing that. And in doing so, you hurt the market overall and you hurt little people. You hurt average middle class people. Am I correct in understanding that?
Well, can I interject for a minute?
Yes.
So what Kurt is describing are large corporate companies, REITs, really big. But what you stated when you said the word brokers is a bit different. So that is actually a separate issue because we do have brokerage firms investing and also gobbling up inventory that normally would go to single family homes. We also have investor agents. We also have wholesalers. We also have cash buyers.
Right.
We factor in the online, auctions, the iBuyers, the virtual buyers. Real estate, obviously, like any industry, is super dynamic. But at this point, it's almost as if the industry is not getting regulated to protect public interest.
Right.
You said, the little guy and regular people, mom and pop, that's really the lifeblood of our country. And one of the biggest, dreams is to own a home. But if people who can borrow from banks can't compete with investor agents, who have knowledge and inside access, who have, basically pools of cash that they can continue to reinvest, hard money lending, or wholesalers, which is an unregulated submarket that impacts the public. Or, right now we have so many people gobbling up inventory that it's impacting altogether.
Right.
So in essence, we are limiting our pool of inventory, and when we do that, we cut out the regular person that is going to support our society.
Right.
And the detriment when we allow cash buyers to gobble up inventory, they're basically not paying a tax revenue on a single family home.
Right.
Using it as you said, as a product. So Kurt, can you talk a little bit about these cash investors? What is the impact to cash investors buying up single family residential homes that are not going to regular homeowner occupieds? And what is the impact on the tax revenues? So are these properties being used as businesses, and are they paying revenue based on taxes based on businesses? Or explain that a bit for a layperson.
Well, I don't have as much expertise as in fact, there's a new book by a guy by the name of Aaron Glantz called Home Wreckers, and he speaks about these entities that own thousands of homes, and they tie $1 million loans. All these homes are tied together by are leveraged and into secondary markets and in fact, when I went online to review his book, the entity that he's calling out in his book, which again called Homewreckers, is they're making the case that they are helping homeowners because the rent is cheaper than mortgage, and they've spent an average of $21,000 on each of these homes that they own. That they are not looking to try to bring these homes back to the market and have them being used for what they were originally built for, which is for families and for occupants as long as people are not having access to the supply, and the supply is being adversely impacted, then the local communities don't have pride of ownership. They don't have tax revenue coming from the turnover of these properties. Who knows what these people paid when they first bought these homes in 2008 through 2012 during the Great Recession. So it disadvantages the public. It disadvantages the local communities, the neighborhoods who have a bunch of tenants as opposed to owner occupiers. So there's a whole number of reasons why this is a problem that should be acknowledged and something done about.
And have it eradicated.
Is regulated a fair word?
Pardon?
Is regulated a fair word?
Well, for example, California just passed a statewide rent control law, and it was interesting that for single-family homes, they did put rent control on the single-family homes if they're owned by a corporate entity. So someone is noticing it at our state level that these corporate-owned single-family homes should have some restrictions on them, as opposed to if someone owns a second home, or if somebody has 2 or 3 homes that they've owned as rental properties, there's no rent control for those people. But if there's a corporate ownership on a single-family home, the state of California is saying that you have rent control. We're not going to let you run roughshod over your tenants and have the freedom to do whatever you want, since you are creating a whole different ownership entity and approach to home ownership. So
it is basically, Alberto, what you were saying, that the once American dream that people had of home ownership, that they could, build wealth for their family, borrow against their home to send their kids to school, borrow against their home, the equity in their home to start a business. All of these options are now dwindling
Right.
because of these large entities that Kirk is describing. That being said, it's very large and kind of big picture. In Atlanta, we have those entities, but we also have,
Robbie, let's go ahead, because let's make sure that people understand what we're talking about. When you say we have these entities, what's the name of these entities that people should be looking out of because when they go to Congress, they're going to have something specific to say, hey, we want to outlaw this or we want to regulate this. What is it that you want them to regulate?
Well, if they are going to regulate, then right now, I don't know. They're using single family homes as a commodity, a business, a product, but they're not paying tax revenue the way a business would. So is that fair to say, Kurt?
Yeah. Like I'm kind of reviewing the highlights of the book Home Wreckers, and they're LLCs. They're one is called Colfin AICAF LLC, which traces back to billionaire ownerships, and some of them are even tied to the Trump administration. Steve Mnuchin got involved with picking up banks this way. So they're ownership entities that are under names that are just not familiar, like Joe and Stacy Smith, who own your house next door. They're these entities that have corporate shields.
So that's one part of it, and it's a problem. And they're not paying their fair share in revenue, and they're so big, it's difficult to even get your head around it. But separately, we have, when you see on these seminars online on how to buy tax liens, on how to, these predatory discovery programs, how to literally file something in court to make it difficult for someone to actually have proper title on their property, how to get probate lists, there's all kinds of programs now. We've got these huge conglomerates, but then you have smaller people showing everybody, in essence, how to cheat people out of their home to amass a book of rentals or a book of flips. So either way, whether it's a huge entity or a smaller level, it still harms the general public, because when you're working with buyers or sellers, the buyers that you're going to take around cannot compete with these people because
Right.
they use traditional lending. They're going to need 40 days to close. They're going to need an appraisal from the bank. They're going to need, an inspection period.
And these corporations can just go ahead and come up with money and get it right away.
The cash buyers, the wholesalers, the agent investors can close in 3 days, no appraisal, cash, and they can continue to liquefy the equity out of any property and keep rolling it into another property and another property and another property. And that's why we have an inventory crisis. And what happens against public interest is that we then, the public, pay for a homelessness epidemic. We pay for an affordability crisis.
Oh, let me stop you there. Let me stop you there. You said we, the public, are going to pay for a homeless epidemic. And the reason we have the homeless epidemic is because these homes are artificially inflated in price. Is that correct?
It's twofold. Yes,
Okay.
they are artificially inflated, and Kurt, feel free to stop me, but they have gobbled up all the inventory.
Mm-hmm.
You have a pool, a pizza, and people who eat way faster than you and who can run there way faster than you and can they gobble up what's left. So now bidding wars happen because the inventory is so low. So it raises the prices to some degree, and we have people who cannot buy. There are people who...
So again, that's what I mean by artificially inflated, right? Because if that is it's a cartel, right? That is what OPEC does. There is an unlimited supply of oil per day, but in order to keep the price level high that they want, they restrict the amount of that on the market. So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, you're saying that these real estate, whatever they are able to gobble up a whole lot of property, keep some of them off the market so that the ones currently on the market will exact a higher price. Did I understand that right?
I mean, would you agree with that, Kurt?
I think so. What are your studies showing, Doug?
I just recently did a class project on a piece of property that's about a half a mile from where Robbie lives. And one of the things that I did was I went parcel by parcel of about 80% of her neighborhood. And I actually printed the tax, what they would call the tax assessor card. And the tax assessor card shows the chain of ownership. It's not a title search, but it's what you do when you do a title search to get started, and it shows the sales and the date and and whether it was a qualified or unqualified sale, which means that unqualified sale means it's an entity to an entity, or there's no cash being transferred, and it shows the qualified sales, which are bona fide purchases for value for fair market price. And you can print lists of both, but when you actually go street by street and compile it and look at it, you can see a clear pattern. 40% of the houses in around this area were foreclosed upon in the 2008 2009 time period. 40%. That's a lot.
Wow.
And they were sold for $20,000 to $40,000 a piece. And then I lost the train of thought a bit. And then probably then what you do is you look and see where the tax bill goes. If it's to Joe and Mary Smith, of a normal person's name, then it's somebody lives there. If it goes to an entity like XYZ LLC, but it goes to the address, you don't know for sure. But that's kind of rare. The majority of them are either a normal person's name, where the tax bill goes to the house, and you pretty much know that's somebody who actually owns it and lives there. And then probably at least are LLCs or corporations where the tax bill goes somewhere else, and that's a chunk. And then when you look at the inventory that's sitting there, the amount of property that was bought very low during at foreclosure that's still owned by somebody, the percentage that's owned by LLCs or corporations is very, very high, to the point where you just shake your head about it. There is definitely an inventory crisis, shortage of inventory. We had a closing. This was one of the first ones we did together, Robbie, the young lady who bought the house over in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, it was an absolute total act of Congress for her to buy it. This was a normal person who had cash to buy, but the whole purchase process was manipulated to where a regular person could not buy it.
Yeah.
All the hoops you got to jump through and the time deadlines you got to go through. So
No, I want to posit something here, because here's what I don't understand. In a country where we commoditize everything, in a country where we try to turn everything into a product, Robbie goes out there, somebody wants a home, they go to a real estate agent, that real estate agent takes them around for the homes that she makes a percentage for the work she has been doing for doing a sale and sell the home. People get onto hard times. Some broker comes in or whomever comes in and buy the house on the cheap, sells it to make a huge profit. That person who had that initial investment get niet.
Roberto, I want you to stop saying broker, because the real problem is that the general public doesn't understand our system of real estate, and that's why they're not fully appalled. When they say we have a housing shortage, they don't fully understand why. And what Doug just described and what Kurt just described with corporate entities, right? Corporate conglomerates, and then separate LLCs to the point of 30 to 40% of communities. Now, when you say broker, you bring in another factor. There are brokerages, firms, right, that also buy up properties. And in my opinion, as a real estate professional, the agent investor and the brokerages that participate competing with the general public for properties, as well as wholesalers, which are entirely separate. But another problem, that is also an issue in the industry. Because in essence, when you just described, Roger knows a property, if I was an agent investor or my brokerage collected properties for my personal gain, you, as my client, would never get the best deal.
Exactly.
What we're allowing is the same people who regulate the system, we're allowing them to act in dual capacity.
That's why that's why y'all are the real estate experts and I'm not. But here's the thing. I am Joe Blow. I am the average American citizen out there that's penalized for things that all three of you know, and we don't. Okay?
Well, the problem is the system protects the system. As a realtor, Kurt cannot even speak against another realtor.
Right. So my thing is, I get it. And first, no, I don't get it. I understand that there's something wrong. I don't want to get it to the detail that you guys have got it because I have to play the role here as the average American citizen who isn't going to go into the technicalities that Robbie knows, that Kurt knows, that Doug knows, right? And in doing so, I guess what I'm trying to say here is as follows. What you guys are telling me scares the holy hell out of me because as it turns
everybody. Because this is the base of our society. And
right. And my thing is then, what you guys are giving me a new mission on, the truth of the matter is, I think a home is sacred. In other words, I think homes should be sacred. What you are doing to sell home as a real estate agent is an important task. The person who has turned homes into a product is a parasite. In other words, I am weak and I get injured. I suddenly can't take care of my home. A vulture comes in to clean up. He makes a profit on that and I lose everything. I think if we were to talk about regulations, now that I'm learning from you guys, if we were to have regulations that say, okay, fine, if we want to have those vultures in the market, it's a free market system. Let them have the vultures, but let's create the rules that if I purchased a home for whatever many $1,000s, that vulture has to make me whole after and his profit doesn't occur until I am made whole. Go ahead.
I disagree with you, Alberto, but here's the thing. These concepts, they are not so far complicated that the general public cannot understand them. They're not. We simply have to deconstruct them in layman's terms.
Right.
And my concern by calling, and I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying that at all. But my concern in, kind of quasi calling people vultures and making people whole, here's the bottom line. There's a component that want to make money. Okay, everyone needs money to live. That's fine. The question is, to what detriment do we allow an industry to go for profit that is going to harm the general public? And the way that I'm saying that is when these LLCs buy up and hold, they sell when it's prime because they're going to make top. But when they hold and we allow them to hold, or we allow agent investors to gobble up property and use a system, we allow wholesalers that aren't even licensed. There's not even a license to these wholesale people who are flipping properties continuously, meaning there's no regulation whatsoever with people's assets. When we gentrify, when we have an inventory crisis, when we have an increase in crime, because every gentrification study shows that crime increases, we as the general public pay for that. So it's not just the one person being harmed who should be made whole. We will pay to subsidize affordable housing complexes. We will pay well-off developers to do so because of our inventory crisis.
No.
You understand?
Yeah, no, again, I still think I get what you're saying and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I just don't. What I think you're convincing me of is again, and it goes back to the original thing that I stated about a product. I mean, we are not going to ask an average American citizen to be a doctor. An average American citizen can't wake up today and say, "Hey, I want to be a doctor," and go and perform a surgery. We can't ask now I can use the word broker. We can't tell wholesalers and brokers that there's property out there. Let's use the capital that we have to do whatever we want with the capital when we know it's then going to actually have an effect on the home market. Go ahead.
But we can. This is what we can do. Okay. The general public can understand that a wholesaler does not have a license. Therefore, a wholesaler in Georgia to sell and buy real estate, you should be licensed. Why? Because you're dealing with contracts and people's assets, and it makes sense that if you do something wrong, maybe your license gets suspended, maybe your license gets revoked. That happens. But if we are allowing people to operate in the same capacity as an agent with no license, where is the punishment when they do something wrong?
So we outlaw it.
We enforce the laws, right? Well, right now we're not enforcing the laws. It's almost as if people are turning a blind eye, and I don't want to get too far off.
Well, let me ask Doug something then. Doug, is a home wholesaler legal or not?
There's no straight answer to that question.
Isn't that
Yeah, I know. As I was formulating my response, I said, that's a lawyer answer.
No. That's the problem in itself.
There's a loophole where it's not necessarily illegal. Let me jump off that and say one thing I was going to say earlier. There is a little bit of sunshine out there. There's a thing called the neighborhood. I'm going to say this a little bit off, but the Neighborhood Restabilization Act.
Right.
And your friend Elizabeth Warren, if she becomes president, or if she doesn't, but she gets her policy positions incorporated into a Democratic president, and they actually go out and do it, that will increase it tremendously. And what it is if you did that, your subdivision, the house next door goes into foreclosure.
Yes.
And you say, you know what, I'm going to buy it myself. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to put $15,000, $20,000 in it, and I'm going to sell it to somebody normal.
Right.
You just invented your own homemade Neighborhood Restabilization Act yourself. You take that same concept and multiply it by thousands across the country, you have the Neighborhood Restabilization Act. Now, when certain foreclosures occur, only and they're bought back by the bank, and I'm not fully understanding completely how it works, but there's a very large amount of inventory that is prohibited of being sold unless it's sold through this neighborhood restabilization program. In order to buy them, you've got to be pre-qualified, tied to a nonprofit that reinvests part of your proceeds back into the community, and the whole purpose of it is to make sure that this house goes into a regular person, and it's not, bought by an entity or bought by a speculator or an investor that's going to be a rental. It's one of the best programs they got going. Now, it's not perfect, of course, and ways people manipulate it, but by and large, it's a very good thing. And what I do is people I represent buy those. Now, that they buy them, that they put, probably $15,000, $20,000 in them, and they don't make that much per sale. Probably average $8,000 a piece, and that's not enough for me and you to go do it. But if you do, a bunch of them, it adds up. But you're going to have a very deep pocket to be able to do that, and they sell them they sell them at appraised value. The people that buy them have to qualify of their income being whatever percentage of it is, and it's just a good thing that is happening. So,
Doug, let me ask you a question, please. I have to get these two things out because I want to make sure that this time is not wasted. That's the bottom line. Wholesaling. Define an assignment contract. Define wholesaling. Define when you have been approached to do assignment contract and wholesale transactions. When you request the disclosures assigned, what is occurred?
Okay. Well, what she's talking about is this: a person, gets a contract to buy a house for $100,000, and then before they own it, they turn around and put it on the market and try to sell it for more.
Someone is approached by a homeowner is approached saying, I want to buy your home. But in reality, the person that's saying, I want to buy your home, is that the person who's buying the home, Doug? Or is there someone else involved?
Okay, that's the wholesaler you're talking about.
Correct.
They have an inventory, personal inventory of contracts where they have a contract to buy your house for X amount of dollars. Then they go out and list and shop those contracts and try to sell somebody for more. And then they'll either do one of two things. They'll either assign the contract to them for whatever price, or they'll try to do a back-to-back closing and use the money off the second closing to flow through and purchase the first.
And themselves a very large non-commission that the homeowner typically is unaware of.
Right.
That's the homeowner's equity, and they tell the homeowner, you don't need an agent, you don't have to pay commission, but they are actually paying more than what a commission is, which is a deceit practice. It could be constituted as fraud. And when Doug, an ethical attorney, says, fine, if all parties are aware of this, I can clear title. Just sign here saying all parties are aware of these conditions, the whole deal falls apart.
They go somewhere else and do it, right?
That should not be legal.
Right. I don't see how a lawyer can be a facilitator of that without being an enabler or the point guard in keeping information, hid from somebody.
I think what you're saying then is because the reason that works, it's a two-pronged process. In other words, the investor is really a middle person getting the house on the cheap when they have a contract that has that house a lot more expensive. That appreciation should have gone to the owner, but instead it goes to the investor.
Correct. And this is happening in communities that are distressed, that are vulnerable more.
Right.
And now we have agents who are licensed in bed with wholesalers. And
it's
so
theft. To put it bluntly, it's theft, right? Because technically speaking,
it's problematic and it's unethical and it can't be regulated. And so I don't want us to go pie in the sky. Oh, these big REITs. Oh, this whatever. Oh, we have these national stabilization programs. No, it's not too hard for the general public to understand.
But the thing about it is that homeowner does not know that those two contracts have to close at the same time.
And we are getting very dangerous in our industry by having iBuyers, online, for auctions. Literally everything is becoming virtual. So things are slipping by people, especially our seniors, and they're losing their assets. That's what's happening.
Right now.
And there are some very creative entrepreneurs out there that will loan you $100,000 for
2 days.
2 hours. No, for 2 hours.
Right.
And that is like the firewall that makes it all legal.
And those are the things where regulation should come in. Now, Kurt, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I don't experience that much. There's not too many foreclosures in San Francisco. I mean, but at the same time, all the inventory is condos now, high-end condos, and the single family. Most of the single family experience that I'm talking about happened in the suburbs in our area,
right?
And that's where the properties were snapped up and are being held.
Well, let me tell you what I want to get the gist out of this program, and I want to wrap it up, is to say the following. We started as saying that we're losing the American dream. So what I want Robbie to do is give me a solution to wrap. How can we restore the American dream from the standpoint of pressuring our politicians?
We should require that every attorney that facilitates a wholesale transaction have the disclosures that Doug requested that these people sign. And if they are not signed, that transaction should not happen because that means there's a lack of transparency. We should regulate that agents do not work with wholesalers because as an agent, as a licensed agent, I am bound to a commitment, a duty to the public. Therefore, I shouldn't engage in practices that are problematic to destabilize markets. And single family residential does impact commercial. It seriously does. We can't get into it this moment, but it does. We also should not allow our government entities, when they liquidate foreclosures on courthouse steps or do tax liens, cash buyers should not have first access to those properties whatsoever. They should go to the general public. The other thing we can do is we can enforce that if I'm going to act as a capacity as an agent, a licensed agent, and have a duty to the public to promote healthy communities, then I need to remove my investor hat. If I want to be an investor, I can't operate in a dual capacity as an agent and have access to systems. That is very similar to insider trading. It's impacting inventory. It's creating other problems that harm public interest. And our agencies, our industries should regulate it. Our politicians should support people like this coming forward, not penalize them, not punish them, not force them to go to other brokerages, not blackball them, not blacklist them. And it will create a healthier society if we do that. Healthier, safer, prosperous, etc.
Now, on the blog, robbykabang.com, she is going to detail that in words as well as in videos. Doug, give me a closer.
As I was saying about the Neighborhood Restabilization Act, at least there's one thing out there that is positive, and it should be expanded. And to Alberto's credit, he likes Elizabeth Warren. She is the one person who is probably right now really, pounding the pavement or whatever on that. And I hope that gets expanded because that's the one thing that is positive that we can do. Fannie Mae or the foreclosures that are institutional lender foreclosures, where you can really do something and have regulations. If they can expand that and take those extra steps to protect that house from going to somebody who's just going to hold it as a renter, and to put people back into those houses is something that needs to happen, and that can make a real positive impact.
Thank you, Kurt. Doug. Kurt?
I think Robbie and Doug's, the points are just excellent. I just want to add that, banks look at single-family homes as the lowest risk when it comes to lending money. 1 to 4 units are considered residential loans. 5 plus unit buildings are considered commercial properties. These entities that have come on the scene in the last decade have taken advantage of the single family market as an investment, as opposed to properties that should be owned by families and couples, and what we can do possibly with tax laws to make property taxes not being able to be written off, or mortgage interest not being able to be written off for a corporate owned single family home. Anything we can possibly do to free that supply, so more people can realize the American dream, and the disparity between the rich and poor can be narrowed a little bit, because it's growing, and it's going to grow more with less people being able to buy single-family homes.
Thank you, Kurt. Robbie, and with that, tell me how do we get started to make a difference, and we'll close it there.
Well, I think the show is the first step, because we, people who have, information in the industry, have to start speaking about it in areas that will allow us to, like your show, so that the general public understand what's happening. So they're not just like, why is it so hard to buy? Why can't I find a property? Why is it taking me a year? Every time I go to a house, it's already pending, it's under contract, and they just don't even understand. So this alone is useful. That being said, I think what Kurt expressed, that, San Fran or LA doesn't have, inventory anymore, and that it's mostly luxury, that is actually the result of everything being gobbled up. They're kind of ahead of Atlanta right now. It's the same on the West Coast, the East Coast, in Vegas, etc. So in Atlanta, in smaller cities that haven't turned, we can learn from what's happened there and protect our residents. And we can hopefully maybe even take shows like this with clips, tweet at our elected officials with the hashtag housing now, and create networks. I think social media is really useful. And Kurt also described creating a network of ethical agents, which I'm ethical agents and ethical attorneys that, so we can at least stick together and show that it can be done right. Building wealth is not a bad thing, but if you do it on the backs or putting your foot on the necks of the general public, that's a problem.
Robbie, Doug, Kurt, thank you so kindly for being a part of Politics Done Right. You guys will be a part of the movement in restoring the American dream. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you, Egberto.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I mean, that is something that we wanted to get out. Folks, if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget that we just recently got qualified for a new feature called Super Chats or Super something else. That $ that you see in the message place, if you want to help support the show, $2, $4, $5, $10, $20, or whatever, that is one way that you can do it. Of course, inside of the messaging, I just gave some options for our Patreon, supporting us through Patreon, supporting us through our equipment GoFundMe, supporting us through PayPal, or supporting through our store. And what do we have at our store? In T-shirts, we have, of course, the T-shirt that says, "Oh, please, please, Nancy Pelosi, don't impeach me." That is a T-shirt from that we have in our store, designed by me. I didn't do the drawing, but I designed it. And that was done for us by an illustrator. And it's on a T-shirt. It's a pretty neat T-shirt. The other one that we have, of course, is of the new guy that was added to my list of supported candidates, which is Andrew Yang. If you look at that, you remember what Andrew Yang said? "I bet you guys can't believe I'm still here. I'm still on stage with these guys." We did the quote of him with his little picture. So go to store.politicsdoneright.com, store.politicsdoneright.com. And then, of course, we also have, what else do we have? We have the one that says, and this is the one that I think I would love folks to be wearing so that other people see it, so that they do their part as well. And that is, "I support independent media." My dear brothers and sisters, we cannot do this without you. We cannot bring the value without you. We cannot bring what the mainstream media cannot bring you without your support. This is the end of the year. I ask you to be as generous as you can to support Politics Done Right. I would love to show, later on I'm going to take a little quick picture of our setup here, and let's give it all to you. But look, please go ahead and use one of those options. Again, you can go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politicsdoneright, or you can go to store.politicsdoneright.com. And of course, you can get to all these, everything, by just going to politicsdoneright.com and selecting a way to support, a manner to support what we're doing. This is important work that we're doing. You are going to be there. You're going to be lied to. You're going to be misled. You're going to be misinformed. And I don't mean by Donald Trump. He does that all the time. But in order to get you to support policies that are not necessarily the most efficacious policies for you, even your mainstream media by necessity. Remember, those drug commercials that you see, those drug ads that are on every cable channel, that are on every broadcast channel, they cannot have you protect your own interests. They have to have some way to tell you that they want to take your money, that they want to take a bigger piece of the pie, and that's the way they do it. So they try to inform you of what's impossible. Politics Done Right and other independent media is here to tell you what is possible, what we can accomplish together, what we can do. So, folks, please support Politics Done Right, but support other rags as well. Common Dreams. Common Dreams have been sending me 3-4 emails a day. We need to make our funds to keep reporting the truth. We have dailycoast.com, opednews.com, democraticonderground.com, coffeepartyusa.com. Support us. Support all these different platforms that are here to tell you the truth, that are here to be a voice. One added benefit with Politics Done Right is you are a part of the family. And believe me, I have things set up, ready to go. I even want to have our everyday people on air, and you will be on air with me. We're going to have contributors come on air. We're going to have subscribers come on air. We're going to have them do pre-records, all kinds of things that we're going to be doing starting in 2020. So I ask you to become a part of the family. politicsdoneright.com. Thank you so kindly for having stayed this amount of time with us. You have a wonderful day. And I'm not going to wish you a Happy New Year yet because I'll do that tomorrow. We are on air at KPFT 90.1 FM tomorrow. You have a wonderful day. And with that, you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!